The fluorescent lights in the bank always made everything feel colder. They didn't just illuminate, they exposed the aging hands I tried to hide, the frayed seams of the purse I hadn't replaced in years, the careful stoop in my posture from decades of lifting too much and asking too little. I was standing in line behind a man arguing loudly on the phone and a woman whose perfume was so strong it made my throat itch. But I stayed patient. I always stayed patient. That morning I had come to check my balance so I could pay the utility bill. That was all. Just enough to cover the lights, the water, the gas. Nothing extra. I wasn't expecting a scene. But a scene is exactly what I got. When it was finally my turn, I stepped forward with a smile. The young teller, brown bob, nervous fingers, maybe 24, smiled back weakly and asked for my ID. I handed it over. She typed something into her computer. Then she blinked. Slower than before. Her smile wavered. "Oh," she said softly. My stomach twisted. "I'm afraid," she started, then stopped, biting her lower lip. "It looks like the account is empty. There was a full withdrawal this morning. A wire transfer. From your son, Jason Moore." It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them. Like she knew what they meant. Like she'd seen it before. Behind me, someone coughed. Another whisper. "That's Jason Moore's mother. You know, the guy who bought the lake house? Didn't he just get featured in that business article? Yeah, she's living off him, I think." The air went thick with judgment. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. Not yet. I smiled, the kind of smile you offer right before you bleed out, and said calmly, "Please open the second safe." The teller blinked again. "Excuse me?" I repeated, "The second deposit box. The one under my name. Helen L. Moore." There was a silence. She glanced at her screen again, then typed something. Her eyebrows lifted just slightly. "Yes. I see that. Would you like a private room?" "No," I said. "I'd like to do this here." She hesitated, then nodded. I could feel the eyes on me. Curiosity. Pity. A bit of glee, too. People love to watch a woman fall apart, especially an older one, especially when they think she's being punished for needing help. I could almost hear the thoughts buzzing. Probably blew all her money and now expects her son to foot the bill. Probably spoiled him. Probably deserves this. Let them think what they wanted. Let them keep their assumptions. They had no idea. No idea what I had given up. What I had survived. What it had cost me to get here. Minutes later, the bank manager, a tall man with kind eyes and a wedding ring he kept fiddling with, appeared at the counter and escorted me to the vault. The metal door loomed like the entrance to a tomb. He unlocked it and stepped aside. Inside, there it was. The emergency box. Untouched for 26 years. My husband, Tom, had insisted we open it right after Jason turned 15. He'd called it a just-in-case plan. I remembered how we'd stood at this very bank, younger and more hopeful, placing in that box the only financial cushion we'd ever had that wasn't earmarked for Jason's future. Tom had sold a piece of land he inherited. I had added my retirement bonus from the bakery. We told no one. For a rainy day, we'd said. Well, the storm had arrived. The manager opened the box and pulled out a thick envelope and a folder. I took them both, walked back to the teller, and placed them calmly on her counter. She was wide-eyed now, saying nothing. I opened the envelope. Inside were old bills. Hundreds. Neatly stacked. The scent of dust and old paper hit me like a memory. I counted silently. 20, 40, 60, 80,000. Then more. A total of over $120,000, all in cash. Not a fortune, but more than enough to survive. The teller stared at the money. I didn't smile this time. I'd like to withdraw half of it, I said evenly, and transfer it into a new account. Under the name Helen Harris. She blinked. We'll need to fill out new documents. I know, I said. I came prepared. I handed her a folded sheet with the alias I had legally registered years ago. I had done it quietly as a backup after Jason had started showing signs of entitlement. After he'd referred to my house as his asset. After he had told me, over Thanksgiving dinner, that I was lucky to have someone like him looking out for me. That was the first time I'd felt a crack in my spine, not of weakness, but of pressure. The kind that comes before something breaks. It was slow, the breaking. It always is. We filled out the paperwork. She processed the new account. I requested a debit card and checkbook. As she worked, I leaned in and added, "I'd also like to report a theft." She looked up, startled. "A fraud, to be exact," I said. My son accessed funds that were not his. He transferred money under my name using authorization I never granted. I would like to open an investigation. She hesitated. "Are you sure you want to do that?" I met her eyes. He left me with nothing. And smiled while doing it. She nodded slowly, then called over her supervisor. As the forms were processed, I sat in the bank lobby, surrounded by the same people who had whispered about me minutes earlier. No one dared speak now. Not when they saw me sitting upright, signing documents, answering calls, correcting account details with the confidence of a woman who had been underestimated for far too long. The narrative had changed. I wasn't the burden anymore. I was the threat. When I finally left the bank, the late morning sun was blinding. I clutched my new folder tightly, stepped onto the sidewalk, and inhaled sharply. Something in me had shifted. Not just my bank balance. Something deeper. For years, I had kept quiet. Paid Jason's credit card debts. Covered his taxes. Allowed him to consolidate my home under his name for efficiency. I had smiled at dinner tables when his friends praised him for taking care of his elderly mother. I had laughed when he made jokes at my expense, mocking my budgeting habits, calling me old school and fragile. I had believed, foolishly, that a child you sacrifice for will remember your kindness. But that morning, in that bank, something sacred inside me snapped. I wasn't weak. I wasn't fragile. And I wasn't finished. There was a time when I believed in thankless love. The kind that expects nothing back. The kind you give quietly every day while no one is looking. That belief died slowly, not with a betrayal, but with 100 small humiliations. Long before bank tellers whispered behind my back. Long before Jason called me fragile or tried to sign away my home like a minor inconvenience. Long before I had to invent a second name just to keep a sliver of myself safe. It started back when I still believed I was raising a good man. Jason was my only child. Conceived late, after years of heartbreak. I was 37. Tom and I had nearly given up. Then, just when we stopped trying, there he was, small, red-faced, howling like he owned the world. And in a way, he did. From the moment he took his first breath, he was everything. I quit my job at the bakery for the first 2 years to stay home. Tom took on extra shifts to make up for it. We made sacrifices silently. Because that's what love was, sacrifice without complaint. Even when Tom got sick, we didn't ask for help. We just did what needed doing. Cancer is a slow thief. It doesn't just take the body. It takes time, hope, then money. Insurance covered less than we expected. I picked up weekend work again, baking from home. Sold pies to neighbors. Cleaned houses. I pawned my wedding ring once, just to cover a round of chemo. Jason was in college when Tom died. We told him it was all covered. That everything was fine. It wasn't. I remember the funeral clearly. Jason gave a beautiful eulogy. People cried. He talked about his dad's strength, his work ethic, the way he never complained. He didn't mention the debt. He didn't know about the part-time job I was working at night. Or the second mortgage I took out to keep Jason enrolled in his fancy out-of-state university. "You're all I have now," I remember telling him that night, just before he left to return to campus. He hugged me stiffly. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of you someday." That promise felt like warmth then. A balm. Years later, it would feel like a threat. After college, Jason got a job in Denver. Finance. Something with numbers and venture capital and 3-hour conference calls. He was always vague. But the paychecks were big and the ego even bigger. I stayed in Salt Lake City. The house was too big for me, but I kept it clean. Kept it warm. Kept it ready for holidays, for grandkids, for a future I believed would come. He visited less often after the first promotion. then stopped visiting entirely when he started dating Brianna, a blonde with a trust fund and a whispery voice who wore $500 sweaters that looked like napkins. I tried. I really did. I invited her to dinner, cooked lamb, cleaned the baseboards, even bought that fancy wine she liked. She didn't touch a bite. Said she was watching her macros. Jason said nothing. Later that night, he asked if I'd consider putting the house in his name for tax reasons. Said it would protect my assets. Said he had a friend in real estate law who could process it for free. I hesitated. He smiled like I was being silly. Mom, you're not getting any younger. If something happens to you, this simplifies everything. I signed. That was the first cut. At first, nothing changed. I still lived there. Still tended the garden. Still paid the bills. Then the rent notices started. At first, they were just a formality. Jason said he had to keep books clean for his portfolio. I mailed him checks. Small at first, then larger. After 6 months, I was officially a tenant in the house I had scrubbed for 35 years. I started skipping meals to make rent. At Christmas, he and Brianna came by for half an hour. They brought a scented candle. Didn't stay for dinner. She looked at the turkey like it was roque asterisk LL, you're still roasting whole birds. She laughed. Jason laughed with her. Later, when I handed him the envelope with my rent, he didn't even glance at it before shoving it in his pocket. No, thank you. No, how are you, Mom? Just a brisk nod. I stayed up that night staring at the ceiling, wondering when I became invisible. But it was at the supermarket, a few months later, that the real break happened. I had gone in for flour and eggs. My card declined. Embarrassed, I stepped aside to check my balance. Before I could do anything, Jason appeared, a surprise visit. Brianna was with him, of course, trailing behind in heels. He waved his own card. I got it, Mom. I smiled, relieved. The cashier swiped. Jason looked at me, smirking. You should try earning again. It's not that hard. Brianna laughed. A tight, cruel little laugh. The cashier looked away. That was the moment. Right then, in that brightly lit aisle full of strangers and cereal boxes, I realized something vital. He no longer saw a mother. Just a wallet. A burden. I left without the eggs. It was a cough that wouldn't go away. Nothing sharp or dramatic. Just a scratch in my throat that stayed for weeks, then months. I tried ignoring it. Drank tea. Used lozenges. Told myself it was nothing. Until I woke up one morning and couldn't stand without seeing spots. The hospital was white, cold, and efficient. I was admitted overnight for tests. Fluid in my lungs. High blood pressure. Low oxygen. A swollen lymph node they didn't like the look of. The word biopsy floated in the air like a threat, never fully landing. I didn't panic. I never do. Jason arrived on the second day. Not with flowers. Not with soup. But with a manila folder in his hand. Just in case, he said, placing it on my tray table. What's this? Standard forms, he replied. Medical directive, power of attorney, some estate stuff. Nothing urgent. Just thought we should be prepared, you know, in case you can't make decisions. He said it gently. Too gently. The kind of voice people use when they're trying not to wake a sleeping dog. I didn't read the papers. I was groggy. On medication. Alone. I trusted him. I signed. The next week, I was discharged. The cough was manageable. The lymph node benign. I was relieved. Ready to go home. Only I didn't have one. I'll never forget the way the air tasted when the cab pulled up to my street and I saw the sign on the lawn, sold. The curtains were gone. The porch furniture, too. Even the doormat. My key didn't fit the lock. I stood there for a full minute, wondering if I was dreaming. Then the new owners opened the door. A young couple in matching pajamas, holding a baby. Can we help you? The woman asked, not unkindly. I turned away without answering. I sat on the curb for nearly an hour. Called Jason. Straight to voicemail. I left a message. Then another. Then a third. He called back that evening. Oh, right, I was gonna tell you, he said casually, as if he were talking about a canceled reservation. We got a great offer. Market's hot. It was the smart thing to do. You sold my house, I said quietly. Our house, he corrected. I live there, I said. Where am I supposed to go? There was a pause. Then a sigh. I wired some money to your account. Just stay at a hotel until you find something. It's not that complicated. That night I stayed at a roadside motel between a gas station and a strip club. The room smelled like bleach and old sweat. The towels were stained. There was a sticky circle on the nightstand where a drink had been set down and never wiped. I slept in my clothes, clutching my purse. I checked my bank account in the morning. The money Jason promised? Gone before it ever appeared. Every account I had access to was empty. It took 3 days to find work. A cashier position at a 24-hour pharmacy. Night shifts. Minimum wage. My back ached. My legs cramped. But I smiled through it. I told customers to have a blessed day while wondering where I'd sleep next week. I never told anyone. Not about the motel. Not about the job. Not about the betrayal. I kept my mouth shut because that's what I'd always done. Until that Tuesday. It was slow at the pharmacy. I was behind the counter, reordering labels. A coworker handed me a magazine someone had left behind. I flipped it open without thinking. Page 34. A full-color photo of Jason. Meet the man behind the hottest new investment startup. There he was in a tailored suit, smiling confidently, standing in front of a glass tower. The article praised his visionary leadership, his innovative use of private capital, his meteoric rise from modest beginnings. Modest beginnings. You mean the house I scrubbed toilets in while he played with Legos? Private capital. You mean the retirement funds I cashed out to keep him in school? I read the article twice. Then I Googled him. There was a launch party. A penthouse in downtown Salt Lake. Photos of him posing with venture capitalists. Brianna smiling beside him, dripping in gold. Someone had posted a video, Jason holding a glass of champagne, saying, "Success is about risk. It's about knowing when to move on from dead weight." Dead weight. That's what I was now. The next day, I closed my bank account. What was left of it, anyway? $62. Then I remembered something. Tom's safe deposit box. The second one. The one Jason didn't know about. I left work early. Took the bus to the bank. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe some old papers. A few $100s in cash. Tom's wedding ring, maybe. I didn't dare hope for more. But when the teller opened that box and her face changed, I knew. She gasped. Did you know there's over 120,000 here? I nodded slowly. Now I do. That night, back in the motel, I sat on the bed and counted the bills. Neat stacks. Crisp hundreds. The money we'd hidden from the world. For emergencies. And this? This was a 5-alarm fire. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I opened my laptop, created a new identity under my maiden name, Helen Harris, and opened a new account. Then I dialed the bank's fraud department. I'd like to report a theft, I said. There was a pause. By whom? The woman asked. I didn't hesitate. My son. Tom always said the only thing more dangerous than trusting too much was not trusting at all. He believed in contingency plans, small safeguards woven into ordinary life. Backup keys in the birdhouse. A second copy of the deed taped under the garage floorboard. And a second safe deposit box in a name no one used anymore, my maiden name, Helen Lillian Harris. We opened it the year Jason turned 15. Tom said, "Boys grow fast. So do their expectations." We laughed back then. The kind of laugh that only people in love can afford, easy, knowing, full of the illusion that planning ahead was enough to keep pain at bay. That safe was supposed to be for emergencies. And betrayal? That counts. I remembered the box that night at the motel, after staring at my balance for the 5th time, trying to convince myself I hadn't misread the zeros. Jason had taken everything. Left me nothing but motel keycards and the echo of my own silence. The next morning, I took the first bus to the bank, not the one he used, the other one. The one downtown that still had the same carpeting from the 90s and a manager who remembered Tom's jokes. "Mrs. Harris," the manager said warmly, leading me into a chilled vault room that smelled faintly of metal and regret. "It's been a long time." I nodded. Too long. He opened the box and stepped aside. Inside, two thick envelopes, a velvet pouch, and a folded no card in Tom's handwriting. I recognized it instantly, neat, square letters, always in black ink. It said only, "If you're reading this, you finally stopped pretending." My hands didn't shake. I think I had run out of trembles. The envelopes were full. Stacks of bills. Tens and twenties, wrapped in faded rubber bands. Savings from decades ago. Receipts for CDs long matured. One was labeled, Helen's Peace Fund. The other, not for Jason. I laughed. Not a sweet laugh. A dry, hollow thing that sounded more like coughing up dust. There was $124,000 in total. I took half. Transferred it into a brand new account under Helen Harris. Set up security questions Jason couldn't guess. Made sure no joint access was possible. The other half stayed in the box. Insurance. For the next storm. I left the bank and went straight to the courthouse. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I filed a fraud report. The clerk raised her brows as I handed over the documents, copies of the forged power of attorney Jason had tricked me into signing, bank statements showing suspicious transfers, the deed to the house I never agreed to sell. "You want to press charges?" she asked, still blinking. "Yes," I said. "And I want a copy of everything sent to my attorney." "You have legal representation?" "Now I do." I walked into a law office I couldn't afford a week earlier and paid a retainer in cash. No financing. No monthly plan. No reliance. The lawyer was young, fresh-faced, and fiery. She listened without interrupting as I told her everything. Every lie. Every slow betrayal. When I finished, she sat back and said, "They always think the quiet ones won't fight." I smiled. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel forced. By the end of the week, Jason was served. I imagined his face when he got the notice at his new penthouse, drinking organic coffee in a robe I probably bought. The document must have burned in his hands. He called me that afternoon. I didn't answer. He texted, "Mom, what the hell is this? You're not thinking straight. We need to talk." Then, "This is embarrassing. You don't want to go public with this. Then, you're being manipulated. I was protecting you." Protecting me. From what? My own independence. I turned off the phone. The silence was like slipping into a warm bath. 2 days later, Brianna called. Her tone was syrupy, artificial. The same voice she used when asking me to take off my shoes before walking on her imported rugs. "Hi, Helen. This whole thing is a misunderstanding. You know Jason loves you. He's just under a lot of pressure with the startup. These allegations could really hurt his image." His image. Not my life. Not my savings. Not my dignity. I replied, "Tell Jason the same thing I told the bank. I'm done pretending." I hung up before she could respond. The next morning, the story hit local press. Son accused of defrauding elderly mother. Startup founder under fire. I didn't give the quote. I didn't have to. Someone at the courthouse leaked the documents. Jason's face was plastered beneath the headline, next to a photo of him smiling smugly in a designer suit. The same face I used to kiss goodnight after brushing the hair off his forehead. The comments rolled in. "Disgusting. Another greedy tech bro. She raised him and he does this?" And a few, probably exaggerating. "Bitter old woman. Let them talk." I didn't care about public sympathy. I wanted accountability. Jason's attorney sent a letter, all smooth words and veiled threats. "This is a family matter, best resolved privately. Public litigation could cause reputational harm to both parties." I had my lawyer frame it and hang it in her office. A trophy, she called it. Proof that they're scared. I wasn't scared anymore. I was awake. I started wearing lipstick again. The same Berg asterisk and Y shade Tom used to call my battle color. I wore it to every meeting, every court hearing, every bank appointment. People started calling me ma'am again. Not sweetie. Not hon, ma'am. Respect returned with posture. I found a studio apartment. Small, sunlit, clean. I painted the walls myself. Bought used furniture. Slept on a mattress on the floor for a while. It didn't matter. It was mine. For the first time in years, I woke up without shame clawing at my throat. No rent due to Jason. No reports to send. No monthly humiliation. Just freedom. At night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and watched the lights of the city blink like stars fallen to earth. Jason hadn't responded publicly yet. He was waiting for me to back down. He didn't know that I'd stopped waiting for his approval the moment I opened Tom's note and read those 8 words. If you're reading this, you finally stopped pretending. He didn't know I'd stopped being afraid. But he would. Soon. Jason showed up at my new apartment 3 weeks after the story broke. Not the son I raised, not the boy who used to press dandelions into construction paper and call it art. No, this man was polished, wired tight with panic, dressed in a jacket too expensive for someone under pressure. He knocked like a debt collector, 3 sharp raps that made my neighbors peer through their peepholes. I opened the door slowly, not because I feared him, but because I wanted him to feel the weight of the threshold, a line he was no longer welcome to cross. "Mom," he said, the word already dressed in desperation. "Can we talk?" I stared at him for a full 10 seconds before stepping aside. Not out of courtesy. Out of strategy. Let the fox into the henhouse. Let him think he's safe. He walked in, scanned the place, the sparse furniture, the second-hand bookshelf, the fresh flowers on the table I bought myself. His mouth twisted slightly. "Didn't realize you were downsizing." "I realized I had too much noise in my life," I said. He sat, uninvited, on the edge of the couch like it offended him. The silence stretched. "You blindsided me," he finally muttered. "The press, the lawsuit, that was low, Mom. You emptied my accounts and sold my house while I was in a hospital bed. Let's not get precious about low." He shifted. "I didn't empty them. I moved assets. Strategically. And your strategy was what? Leave me in a motel." "It wasn't like that." "Then how was it?" He didn't answer. Just looked down at his hands. Hands that once clutched my coat on his first day of kindergarten, terrified of being left. Now those hands were shaking, but not from fear of abandonment. From fear of exposure. "You've made this very public," he said finally. "Brianna's family's threatening to pull out of the startup. My board is freaking out. Do you even realize what you've done?" I smiled. Finally. There it was, the crack. "You're worried about investors?" I asked. "You should be worried about your lawyer. He's about to receive 37 pages of documentation, bank transfers, forged signatures, doctored statements, surveillance footage, recorded calls, emails, **TS. His face changed. Paled. Like someone punched him through the ribcage. "You recorded me? You trained me. Remember? Always cover your bases. Always keep receipts. That was business." "No. That was betrayal," I said, my voice flat. "And I've learned to treat betrayal like a contract. Terms. Conditions. Consequences." He stood, suddenly, like the room had become too small. His jaw flexed. He walked to the window, arms folded, staring at the parking lot below like he could escape out of it. "You don't know what this could do," he said, his voice now laced with warning. "To me. To my reputation. And?" He turned. "You don't want to burn this bridge. There is no bridge, Jason. You demolished it. Dynamite, gasoline, and a smile. Jesus, Mom." He rubbed his face. Then, the kicker. The move I'd been waiting for. "I'll make it right," he said. "I'll give you a stipend. Monthly. Quietly. We settle. You pull the case. The media dies down. You get peace. I rebuild. Everybody wins." I tilted my head. "A stipend. Better than this circus. Why not just give me back what you took?" His eyes darkened. "That's not possible." "Why?" He hesitated. "Because it's gone." There it was. The truth. "Define gone," I said. "Invested." "In what?" "In growth." "In yourself, you mean." He looked away. I stood. Walked to the table. Opened a drawer. Took out the file folder. "This is a copy," I said. "The originals are already with my lawyer. There are backups in 2 separate locations." He stepped forward, voice strained. "You're really doing this?" I met his eyes. "I already did." He opened the folder. Flipped through pages, financial statements, notarized affidavits, photos from the security footage at the bank, highlighting the day he forged my signature. I watched his hands tremble as he reached the page with the screen capture of his own smug face leaning over the teller's counter. Then the phone transcripts, 2 calls he made to the bank manager, caught on their system. One where he called me mentally soft. Another where he joked about moving the funds before the old lady figures it out. I watched his mouth go dry. I was venting, he said. That wasn't serious. Then you won't mind when it's played in court. He snapped the folder shut. Threw it on the table. You're not going to win. I don't need to win, I said. I just need to speak. His nostrils flared. You don't want this fight, Mom. You think this is a fight? I stepped closer. This is my reckoning. He went still. Very still. Then he pulled the last card. Do you even care what this will do to me? I paused. The air felt charged. I cared, I said. For 35 years. I cared when you were colicky. When you cried over scraped knees. When I skipped meals to pay your tuition. When I sold my jewelry to pay off your credit card. I cared when I wrote rent checks for a house I already owned. I cared every single time you told people you were supporting me. I leaned in so he could see the scar this had carved into my soul. But now? No, Jason. I don't care anymore. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. Leave. He didn't move. Now. Something in my voice, something primal, made him retreat. He grabbed his coat. Said nothing. Walked to the door. Before he left, he turned. I hope you know what you've done. I didn't flinch. I do, I said. For once. He left. And I locked the door behind him. Slowly. Quietly. The next morning, his lawyer called. Tried to threaten. I forwarded him to mine. Then the calls started again, not from Jason, but from strangers. Reporters. Activists. Women. Men. Mothers. People who saw the article and whispered, that's my story, too. The bank called. Offered an internal apology. Invited me to speak to their senior clients about financial safety. Said they wanted to honor my resilience. I didn't accept right away. But I kept the voicemail. Because there was something I hadn't heard in a long time in their voice. Respect. Later that week, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a check. $5,000. No note. No apology. Just silence signed with money. I tore it in half. Then again. Then again. I didn't want his hush money. I wanted truth. Justice. My name back. And I wasn't done. Because now it was my turn. The thing about a house of cards is that it doesn't take a storm to bring it down. Just one breath. One tremor. Jason's tremor began with a headline. The story started small, buried on page 7 of a regional newspaper, beneath city council updates and celebrity gossip. But it grew teeth. People started to talk. Then to share. By the end of the week, the headline had migrated to a national site. Startup star accused of financial elder abuse. Mother presses charges against tech son. The photo they used was brilliant. Jason in his expensive watch, adjusting his tie, eyes mid-blink. Smug. Sharp. Caught. The internet did what it always does. Dug deeper. Found old interviews where he'd claimed to come from nothing, had bootstrapped his empire. Found discrepancies between his company filings and the dates I'd provided in my affidavit. Found quotes he'd given praising his supportive parents while quietly draining my accounts. Reddit got a hold of it. Then Twitter. Then blogs that specialize in Silicon Valley exposés. Overnight, the comment section became a courtroom. Imagine stealing from your mother and calling it a business plan. Classic narcissist. These guys build empires on their mother's backs. Hope she sues him into the ground. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. The world had picked up the torch. What surprised me wasn't the anger. It was the other mothers. The emails came like a flood. He stole from me too. My son forged my signature for a car loan. My daughter-in-law tricked me into signing over my condo. I thought I was alone until I read your story. One message stood out. A woman in Nebraska wrote, "You gave me courage. I haven't spoken in 10 years. But now I'm calling a lawyer." I read that one twice. Then a third time. Then I cried, not for what I'd lost, but for how many of us had been trained to call theft love? Meanwhile, Jason's life began to peel apart. First, the investors pulled out. It started with one VC firm. Quietly. Then another. A memo leaked, concerns over founder's judgment and pending legal matters. Soon, his startup's valuation dropped. The name disappeared from sponsored ads. Employees started updating their LinkedIns. Brianna deactivated her Instagram. 2 weeks later, his name was removed from the company's website. Founder erased. No press release. No goodbye statement. Just gone. Then came the divorce. Brianna filed. Publicly. The kind of filing that oozes strategy, claims of irreconcilable differences, vague mentions of domestic tension, and a demand for primary ownership of joint assets. The same woman who once laughed at my roast turkey was now claiming she had concerns over his financial ethics. She sent me a message, short and bitter. Congratulations. You finally got what you wanted. I didn't reply. I never wanted destruction. I wanted truth. But destruction, it seems, was the only language Jason understood. And he was fluent. The final blow came a month after the story broke. The Salt Lake Tribune asked for an interview. In person. Front page feature. I said yes. We met outside the house Jason sold from under me. The new owners had added shutters. Painted the door a cheerful red. I stood on the sidewalk in a blazer and jeans, clutching a photo of Tom and me in front of that same door, 30 years earlier. The journalist was young. Nervous. Kept adjusting her recorder. You don't have to speak if you're uncomfortable, she said. I smiled. I'm more comfortable now than I've ever been. We sat on the bench across the street, and I told her everything. Not just about Jason, but about the slow unraveling of motherhood under the weight of obligation. About the years of quiet sacrifice mistaken for servitude. About how easy it is for love to become a transaction, and how hard it is to notice until your account is empty. She asked if I hated my son. No, I said. I mourn him. The boy I raised. But I won't enable the man he became. She asked if I forgave him. I'm not sure forgiveness is the right word, I said. I remember him. That's enough. The story ran on a Sunday. Full page. My name in bold, Helen Harris, the woman who said no. People read it. And they showed up. The next day, I found flowers on my doorstep. Notes. Packages. Cookies. Letters. One woman sent a photo of her mother with the caption, "She died never saying a word. Thank you for speaking for her." A man sent a check for $50 with a note, "Use this to start again." My son stole everything too. I didn't cash it. But I kept every letter. Even the cruel ones. Especially the cruel ones. One man wrote, "You probably deserved it. Kids don't do that unless the parent was a nightmare." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Let it echo. Let it test me. And when it no longer stung, I knew I was healing. But Jason wasn't. He tried damage control. Recorded a video, tight framing, soft lighting, wearing a hoodie to look humble. I love my mother, he said. We had a misunderstanding. Families are complicated. I hope we can resolve this privately. The comments didn't buy it. Then why empty her account? Where was this energy when you evicted her? Shut up and pay her back. That same week, his LinkedIn disappeared. So did his Twitter. Then his condo listing went live. Luxury penthouse. Price to sell. The house of cards was now rubble. One night, I received a knock on my door. It was late. Rain tapped the windows. I opened it. Jason stood there. Soaked. Unshaven. No jacket. He looked smaller. I didn't know where else to go, he said. I stepped aside. He didn't move. I'm not here to ask for anything, he said. I lost everything. I nodded. I know. He looked down. The money's gone. The company. Brianna. Everything. I didn't take it from you. I know, he said. I took it from you. Then from myself. We stood in silence. Then he asked the question that burned. Do you hate me? No, I said. But I don't trust you. He nodded. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. But I needed to say it. I'm sorry. I believed him. But I didn't invite him in. Some doors, once closed, stay that way. I hope you rebuild, I said. I hope you become the man I raised. He looked up, eyes glassy. I'll try. Then he turned. Walked into the night. No umbrella. No jacket. Just the rain. And whatever truth it had finally washed into him. The day of the hearing, the sky cracked open and poured down on Salt Lake like the city itself was weeping. I arrived early. Not because I was nervous, I wasn't, not anymore, but because I wanted to feel the silence before the noise. I wanted to sit in the hallway and remember the years I spent giving up birthdays, vacations, weekends, sleep, identity, all for a child who eventually looked me in the face and saw a line item. My attorney, Madison Burke, sat beside me. Calm. Sharp. The kind of woman who knew how to cut without drawing blood. She was dressed in navy blue, hair in a clean bun, folders stacked with surgical precision. You ready, Helen? She asked. I nodded. I've been ready since he sold my house. When the courtroom doors opened, I walked in first. Head high. Berg asterisk and Y lipstick. A dress I bought at a thrift shop that made me feel like myself again. Not the mother of a tech mogul, not the burden in the corner, not the widow who was supposed to fade quietly into retirement. Me. Jason was already inside. He looked different. Thinner. Paler. A man trying to look composed while his empire leaked through his pockets. He didn't meet my eyes. He sat with a new lawyer, older, slicker, the kind of man who believed charm was still currency in rooms where truth had already been audited. The judge, Honorable Lydia Greaves, entered 5 minutes later. Black robe. Steel gray hair. No nonsense. She didn't waste time. This is case 4829, Helen Moore versus Jason Moore. Allegations include financial fraud, property misappropriation, and elder exploitation. Counsel, are we ready to proceed? Madison stood. We are, Your Honor. Jason's lawyer stood too. We are. However, we'd like to request a closed hearing to protect the reputations of both parties. Judge Greaves didn't even blink. Denied. This is a public courtroom. We proceed. I saw Jason flinch. Good. The prosecution began with a timeline clean, brutal facts, transfer dates, bank logs, signatures not matching mine. A line-by-line dissection of betrayal. I watched Jason squirm as the teller's affidavit was read aloud. She appeared unaware of the full account balance. The defendant authorized transfers using a power of attorney we later confirmed had been signed while she was under medication in a hospital setting. His lawyer tried to object. My client acted under assumed consent. Assumed? Judge Greaves said, eyes narrowing. You're suggesting he assumed his mother consented to emptying her life savings? There was precedent in their financial relationship. You mean the one where she paid him rent to live in her own house? Silence. They called witnesses. The bank manager. A notary who remembered Jason's offhand comment. She won't know what she signed. Don't worry. The realtor who sold the house. Even my neighbor, who testified that he saw a moving truck pull away while I was still in the hospital. I sat through it all, unmoving. I wanted the facts to do what my grief couldn't, stand upright. Finally, it was my turn. I stood slowly. Walked to the witness stand. The courtroom seemed to hush itself. Madison approached. Please state your name for the record. Helen Moore. Also known as Helen Harris. Do you recognize the defendant? I looked at Jason. Yes, I said. That's my son. And do you believe he stole from you? I didn't blink. No, I said. I know he did. There were no gasps. Just silence. Tell the court, Madison said gently, what happened. I took a deep breath. I was a mother, I began. I gave birth late in life. I worked 2 jobs. I supported his dreams. I believed sacrifice was the rent you paid for love. I was wrong. Jason's eyes finally lifted. I paid his tuition, covered his loans, signed over my house for tax benefits, then paid rent to live in the place I raised him. He told me I was lucky. He said I was fragile. He said he'd take care of things. What he meant was he'd take everything. I paused. Let it land. He sold my home while I was recovering from a biopsy. He cleared my account and said it was a transfer. He left me with $62 and a motel key. A hush moved across the room like a cold draft. I've been called ungrateful, bitter, a burden. But the truth is, I was too quiet for too long. I let love become a debt. And now I'm collecting. Madison nodded. No further questions. Jason's lawyer approached. Fake sympathy plastered across his face. Mrs. Moore. Ms. Harris, I corrected. Right. Ms. Harris. Would you agree that your son has contributed to your life over the years? Financially? No. Emotionally? Less than that. He chuckled. So he never paid a bill? With my money, yes. He held up the infamous power of attorney. This was signed under your consent. I was medicated. He brought it to my hospital room. But you did sign. Yes. So did countless women before me. We sign away things every day. Peace. Silence. Autonomy. That doesn't make it right. Do you love your son? I paused. I love who he was. Not who he became. No further questions. I stepped down. Jason didn't take the stand. Cowards rarely do. The closing arguments were quick. His lawyer. This is a family disagreement magnified by media and misinterpretation. There was no malicious intent. Madison. Malicious intent isn't required when the facts speak for themselves. He didn't just take money. He erased her autonomy. Judge Greaves adjourned. Promised a verdict within 72 hours. I walked out into the hallway. Exhaled. Madison leaned over. How do you feel? Empty, I said. But clear. 2 days later, the verdict arrived. Guilty. Jason was ordered to repay $211,000, including restitution, damages, and court fees. He was barred from managing my finances. A protection order was issued. My property was returned. His startup issued a statement distancing themselves. He didn't show up for sentencing. But I did. I wore red that day. Bright, defiant. The color Tom once said made me look ready to take the world by the collar. When Judge Greaves read the verdict, I felt no joy, no triumph. Just a slow loosening of something that had been coiled in my chest for years. Afterward, I walked outside. Reporters waited. One asked, "Do you have anything to say to other parents going through this?" I looked straight into the camera. Yes, I said. Love doesn't mean silence. And age doesn't mean surrender. Then I walked away. Not into the sunset, but into the next chapter. The gavel didn't echo as much as I thought it would. There's a moment in every courtroom drama where the sound rings out final, cinematic, like justice itself. But in real life, it's just a dull tap. Not even loud. Just, done. Still, it rang in my bones for days. After the verdict, I didn't throw a party. I didn't pop champagne or take victory laps. I went home to my little one-bedroom apartment with a peeling windowsill and the peace I'd paid for in sleepless nights and court fees. I boiled a kettle, made tea, sat at the kitchen table and listened to the water pipes hum through the walls. I expected relief to rush in. It didn't. It crept slow, hesitant, like it was afraid to touch the places still bruised. People started treating me differently. Not with pity anymore, but with a kind of distant reverence. Like I'd survived something sacred and terrible, a shipwreck in plain view. The bank, the one Jason used, called me. Not with apologies, but offers. Would you be willing to consult on financial elder abuse prevention? We want to educate others. Your story is powerful. I laughed. Once. Then said yes. 2 weeks later, I had a desk at their downtown branch. A nameplate, Helen Harris, Senior Financial Advisor. Clients came in, mostly older women with questions they'd been too embarrassed to ask their own children. Is it normal that my daughter has access to my online banking? My grandson handles all my bills. Should I be worried? I loaned him $30,000 3 years ago and haven't heard a word. Is that theft? I listened. Held their hands when they trembled. Told them the truth. No, I'd say. You're not overreacting. You're waking up. Some days I went home heavy. Not from the work, but from the sheer volume of quiet pain in the world. Mothers erased, grandmothers discarded, love twisted into a leash. Other days, I felt strong. Like maybe speaking could become a kind of scaffolding, holding others up while they rebuilt. Jason never reached out again. I knew from the news that he'd sold his car. moved to a smaller apartment. Brianna filed for bankruptcy after withdrawing from the startup. I heard whispers that he was pitching new projects, but no one was biting. Not yet. Not after what happened. A part of me thought I'd feel satisfaction watching his world crumble. But when you love someone, really love them, even justice leaves scars. Still, I didn't regret anything. One afternoon, a woman about my age came into the bank. Nervous. Hands shaking. She introduced herself as Ruth. Said she'd been following my story. My son forged my name on a loan, she whispered. I didn't say anything because I thought that's just what mothers do. I offered her a chair. Poured water. Listened. At the end of her story, she reached into her purse and handed me an envelope. Inside was a photo, her, much younger, holding a toddler on a park bench. I don't want to feel stupid anymore, she said. You're not stupid, I told her. You were just lied to in a language you thought was love. She wept. Openly. I stayed with her until the tears stopped. That night, I went home and opened my own envelope, the one from the safe. The one labeled Helen's Peace Fund. I spread the bills on the table. Counted again. Still just over $60,000 left. I didn't need all of it. Not anymore. I kept half. Donated the other half to a foundation that supported victims of elder fraud. I attached a note, for the ones who can't speak yet. The next morning, I reopened my bakery. Not the old one, that was sold when Jason needed seed money. No, this was new. Small. Bright. Downtown. I named it Helen's Second Chance. People came in slowly at first, curious about the woman from the headlines. Then the scent of cinnamon rolls and the warmth of fresh bread did the rest. By the end of the first month, we were breaking even. By the third, I had to hire help. One afternoon, a journalist came in. Can I interview you again? She asked. People want to know what happened next. I smiled. What happened next, I said, is I stopped surviving and started living. She paused. Do you forgive him? I didn't blink. Forgiveness isn't a gift, I said. It's a key. And I left it in the lock. But I never turned it. She didn't understand. Most people don't. They want resolution to be clean, ribbons and bows and final hugs. But real healing is quieter. Sometimes it looks like a woman icing a cake while humming to herself, knowing her phone won't ring with another demand. Sometimes it looks like an empty chair that no longer aches. A week later, I got a letter from Daniel, my nephew, Tom's sister's boy. We hadn't spoken in years. He'd read about the case. He wrote, Aunt Helen, I had no idea. You always seemed so strong, so steady. I remember your apple pie. Your laugh. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. And I'd love to visit the bakery sometime. I framed that letter. Hung it behind the counter. Not because I needed validation, but because it reminded me, the love that stays doesn't ask for proof of worth. One night, just before closing, I sat alone in the bakery. The lights dimmed. The radio low. I opened the last of the letters I'd received from a woman in Montana. She wrote, My son told me I was lucky he let me live in the basement. That I was dead weight. I read your story and I left. Took a bus. I'm living with my sister now. I made apple pie for the first time in years. I just wanted to say thank you. You showed me what was possible. I folded the letter. Held it to my chest. For years, I thought losing Jason meant losing everything. But I hadn't lost myself. And that, in the end, was everything. It's strange how silence changes its sound. There was a time when silence meant absence, Jason not calling, Tom's chair sitting empty, the echo of meals eaten alone. But now silence feels full, peaceful, like a room airing out after years of holding its breath. The bakery became my rhythm. Morning dough at 5, cinnamon rolls by 7, customers by 8. We opened every day except Mondays. That was my day, my time, my pause between chapters. On one Monday in late spring, I stood on a small hill overlooking the lake near where Tom and I used to picnic. The breeze was soft. The trees were thick with green. And in my hand was the last envelope from the safe, unopened until now. Tom's handwriting. Faded. Familiar. I took a breath and peeled it open. Inside, a single sheet. Lined. Dated 12 years before he died. Helen, it read. If you're reading this, it means you're still fighting. I hope you never needed this money. But if you do, use it for something that belongs only to you. Not Jason. Not me. You. There was no flourish. No signature. Just that. You. I folded the note slowly and placed it back in the envelope. I didn't cry. I just smiled, the kind that aches a little. The kind you give to ghosts you love deeply. That week, I started planning the bakery's expansion. Nothing flashy. Just a second location, closer to the college campus. More foot traffic. More students. I hired a manager, Alicia, a single mother with 2 kids and a work ethic that reminded me of myself 20 years ago. I told her, you run this like it's yours. I'm just the investor. The words felt good in my mouth. Investor. Not donor. Not loan officer to the entitled. Not mom, I need. Investor. One morning, a young man walked into the bakery with a notepad and wide eyes. Said he was doing a school project on local businesses owned by women over 60. I almost laughed. I'm 61, I told him. He smiled. Exactly. He asked questions no one had asked me in years. What was the hardest day? What keeps you going? What advice would you give someone afraid to start over? I paused on that last one. I'd say, I told him, don't wait for the pain to get loud. If something feels wrong, too heavy, too one-sided, that's your sign. Don't wait for betrayal. Trust your own silence. He scribbled furiously. Before he left, he asked, do you have a mission statement? I thought about it. Then nodded. Yes. Never again mistake sacrifice for obligation. Love is not currency. He smiled. That's powerful. I watched him leave and wondered if his mother knew how lucky she was. That night, I walked home under a sky bursting with stars. I passed a bench where Jason once sat as a boy, licking ice cream off his knuckles, telling me he wanted to buy a castle when he grew up. I paused, closed my eyes. I forgave the boy. Not the man. Not yet. But the boy. He didn't know what this world would do to him. What entitlement would rot. What hunger for validation would consume. He didn't know that ambition without anchor turns into theft. I released him quietly into the wind. 1 week later, I was invited to speak at a financial literacy event. Panel of women. Microphones. A room full of people leaning forward, waiting. The moderator asked, what did you learn through all of this? I held the mic. I learned that betrayal doesn't always come with fists. Sometimes it comes with smiles. Paperwork. Trust me, Mom. I learned that family isn't defined by DNA, it's defined by respect. And I learned that the scariest thing you can do as a woman in your 60s is say, no more. Applause came slowly. Then louder. Afterward, a woman with silver hair and a trembling mouth came up to me. My daughter-in-law has access to my accounts, she whispered. I think she's hiding things. I placed a card in her hand. Call this number. Ask for Alicia. Tell her I sent you. It was the same feeling as handing someone a raft. Maybe it would hold. Maybe it wouldn't. But it was something. By midsummer, the second location opened. College kids came in for coffee and muffins. I hired 3 part-time baristas. Watched them laugh behind the counter, unaware of the woman sitting in the corner, watching freedom take shape. Sometimes, customers recognized me. The articles still floated around online. You're that woman, right? They'd ask. The one whose son. Yes, I'd say. That's me. You're so strong, they'd say. And I'd smile politely. But inside, I always thought, no. I'm just finally honest. A month later, Jason sent a letter. No return address. Just 1 page. Mom, I'm sorry. Not for the money. Not for the house. For not seeing you. I don't expect you to reply. I just wanted to say, I see it now. Everything you gave. Everything I took. I hope you never need to forgive me. But if you do, I'm trying to be better. Not for you. For me. Jason. I read it 3 times. Then folded it. Placed it in a drawer. Beside Tom's letter. Not forgiven. Not forgotten. But acknowledged. And sometimes, that's enough. That fall, I traveled. First to Maine. then Oregon, then up to Vancouver. I tasted new breads, learned to make maple croissants from a woman named Louisa who cursed like a sailor and baked like a saint. I laughed more than I had in years. No itinerary. No one asking for bank transfers. No guilt. Just me. At 62, I discovered I liked red wine after all. That my knees still worked on hiking trails. That my laughter, the real kind, hadn't disappeared. It had just been waiting. Waiting for me to remember that life isn't a ledger. It's a meal. A song. A room full of light. One afternoon, while packing up to return home, I found a journal entry I'd written during the trial. I'd scribbled it on a napkin, too afraid to say it out loud then. It read, "I am not just a mother. I am not just a wife. I am not a wallet, a roof, a pension. I am a person. With limits. With needs. With the right to say enough." I pinned it on the wall when I got back. And beside it, I hung a photo of the bakery, both locations bustling, bright, alive. They asked me once, "How did you rebuild after losing everything?" And I answered, "I had a second safe. And a spine.